Hello and welcome everybody, it's TheJWittz here from my Pokemon channel TheJWittz, and I've been talking about getting some kind of interview content up on my site, talking with a lot of really cool people, either straight from Pokemon or from the Pokemon community, and right now I feel like a really cool thing is happening, and that is Pokemon Reorchestrated. And so, my surprise guest today is Braxton, or aka Skotein. Let's try that again. Skotein, right? Like protein? Is that?
Yes, Skotein like protein, but Skotier.
Skoti. Oh, right. The name.
Yeah.
But I'm here with Skotein, who has worked on this Pokemon Reorchestrated project for a very long time, and has finally just released his first full album, and that is Kanto Symphony, which is essentially a collection of tracks from the Pokemon Red and Blue games, and it's almost the entire Red and Blue soundtrack reorchestrated into 35 songs, almost 80 minutes. It's been getting a lot of praise and a lot of hits on iTunes. I think it's awesome, and so I'm here with the creator. How's it going, Skotein?
It's going well. I'm actually in Houston right now on a family trip to visit my grandpa, but I'm still doing, I'm still like answering tons of questions about the album on Twitter and Facebook. I manage all of the site content as well as the Facebook page, the Twitter. I'm like a one-man team, so it's a little crazy right now.
Yeah, so you're basically like just wired to the system at this point. I mean, it's not even a week old, right?
No, yeah, I've been basically glued to my computer and my smartphone for this last week, and I don't know what I would have done without my iPhone, because I would go to school and then I would check Twitter and suddenly I have all the followers following me, and yeah, it's just. Oh, I had downloaded so many apps just to keep track of everyone and everything going on, so invaluable.
I can imagine. So is all this like success that you've had so far, is it unprecedented? You did not expect this much? I
expected the album to be pretty popular among my followers, and I knew that a lot of them would be sharing it, but I didn't expect it to top the iTunes charts. It hit. Yeah, it made the top 30 albums.
Top 30 yesterday, right? And it's constantly in the top 5 for soundtracks.
Yeah, it was number 2 for a while. I think it's fallen a bit since then, just because there hasn't been a lot of news about it coming out. So
well, hey, that's what I'm here for, right?
Yeah, thank you for the plug.
No, I mean, it's totally, I mean, even I got the story from a plug from one of my fans. They were just like, hey, have you listened to this album? And I looked at it and I was like, oh yeah, I remember, that was that Kickstarter project when I was completely broke. How did it turn out? And I downloaded it. I was just pleasantly surprised. I was like, I gotta get a hold of this guy. I gotta share this with everybody else.
I appreciate it a lot, because it was initially my goal to try to reach all of the Pokemon fans on the internet. Pretty ambitious, but
no, hey, I mean, for anybody who's played those original songs, those themes instantly come back into your head, whether they're orchestrated or altered or not. It's like songs you've heard your entire life. You just didn't know you were listening to them because they were chip tunes when you were a kid.
And they were just on loop forever and ever, so slowly being ingrained in your memory.
Yeah, so it's really nice to just hear them in an upscale form, but it's done really well. And one of the things, obviously, I want to talk about the creation of it, but one thing I'm thinking about right now is the fact that, like, obviously you guys have a few different soloists on different string instruments, but a lot of it is just high scale samples, right?
Exactly.
Now that like, to some people they're like, oh, it's not a real orchestra? What? I've been fooled. And it blows my mind that you can electronically sound so legitimate.
I'm a master of illusions.
So, I mean, I just think that that's really cool, the way media is moving to the point where you might not even necessarily need instruments. The instruments sound so good.
Yeah, and like the samples that I used to create the tracks for Pokemon Reorchestrated and for Kanto Symphony are all like products that LA composers for film and games use constantly to create mock-ups for directors that they then show them to, you know, get a rough idea of, oh, is this good for the film? Is this good? Is this a good score? And then usually that's not the final product, but they'll take that and then they'll transcribe it for a real orchestra and then record it. It saves a lot on like recording costs.
Oh yeah, that way the only recording you do is the final recording.
Exactly. The libraries nowadays have gotten so sophisticated. Like for my string library, for example, it like depending on the velocity that you play the notes on your MIDI controller, you can trigger different legato samples. So the little slides in between each note. If you wanted to, for example, trigger a glissando, so like a long slide between notes, you would like the transition on the MIDI controller, you would like lightly tap the next key, and you have to make sure that when you're playing, the notes overlap if you want to trigger legato, because otherwise it'll be separated notes.
I just found that really interesting that you have such a legitimate sound where people don't even know at this point that it's not even all orchestrated, and I just think that that's really cool. Technology's progressed to that point.
Definitely.
But, why don't we start a little bit at the beginning? Why don't you tell people your story? Let me know, you know, like what made you want to start recomposing some of these tunes, or even just work with music in general.
It goes a long way back. I didn't actually start practicing music in a disciplinary manner until I was about 17, when my parents got me a keyboard.
Oh wow, that's
yeah.
And you're 21 now, right?
Exactly, yeah.
So that's what, 4 years, and all of a sudden this is already a product. No, that's amazing.
Well, I was in choir in high school, so I think that definitely helped, you know, develop my sense of harmonic structure and some rhythm. But before that, I also listened to a lot of film soundtracks when I was a kid. Like, I was in love with John Williams scores for Harry Potter, and
oh yeah, he's the staple.
Yeah, Harry Potter, Star Wars, that was all I would listen to when I was a kid. My tastes have changed a little bit since then, but I still have a really deep appreciation for Mr. Williams. And yeah, after I got my keyboard, I started playing video game music on the piano, and around that time I was also on the internet looking up music projects, and I found Zelda Reorchestrated by chance, and I saw what they were doing for Zelda music and was really, really inspired. I had no idea at first how they were pulling it off, and I had no idea what sample libraries were. Eventually, I started working in GarageBand and tinkering around with the orchestral jam pack that you could buy separately. So I started doing Pokemon remixes in GarageBand, and they weren't like full arrangements that I tend to do now, like with Kanto Symphony. They were more like drag and drop MIDI and alter the instruments. I feel like I've heard some of those before, some like the early Johto stuff and whatnot. There was one piece that I did that was a little bit of an arrangement, and I actually transcribed it by ear. It was like one of the first pieces I transcribed, and I was super proud of myself. Was the New Bark Town theme, and it used to be up on my channel, but I've made it private for secret reasons. I was going back out of curiosity, and I heard the Johto songs, and I was like, oh, I should go and see if he has any Johto songs, because I know you have a few like standalone things, and I remember a few being in the past, but they're gone now. Secret reason. Yes, I shall not reveal.
I mean, I hear everyone's talking Johto Symphony already.
Yeah, no, there will definitely be a Johto Symphony. I can't give you a timeline on when that will happen, but I have way more ambitious plans in the future for Johto, and that's all I'm going to say about that.
Right, I've heard. Now you're in a musical school currently, right?
Yes, I attend Cornish College of the Arts in Seattle, Washington.
So how's, I guess, going from kind of this like grassroots, or not? I guess you can't call it grassroots anymore. Just these like technological roots learning all these things. How is it going from that to learning straight composition?
It is insanely difficult. I pretty much relied on my ear all of my life for my music career up to this point, and so now having to sit down and analyze it and figure out exactly what I'm doing when I am doing stuff by ear is so excruciating. I'm just so slow at like notation and reading, sight reading music, but I am getting better, and that'll definitely be an invaluable school or tool once I graduate and am able to actually write music on paper.
Yeah, I can't believe that. Like, you go through these, and I remember I was reading your Ask Me Anything thread that you had, which found its way on the front page of Reddit. How was that?
I think I screamed when I woke up that morning. I just refreshed my Reddit AMA, and it went from like 50 upvotes to over 1,000. It was a very pleasant surprise. But
I remember I was reading through that, and someone was like, "Oh, will you ever have the sheet music for this?" And you were like, there isn't really sheet music right now. And my jaw hit the floor. I was like, how do you create like these melodies and tunes that work but weren't even from a musical, like a technical musical background? It's very cool. Like you put this all together through MIDI, and well, not all, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, pretty much it was MIDI notation, and then the samples were all programmed meticulously to sound realistic.
But I guess moving over to the physical, archaic notation of today is probably pretty tough. So you started with the you made music before the Kickstarter, but about a year ago, the Kickstarter was what you were doing to try and get the project off the ground, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And that was, obviously, Kickstarter was a little young at that point, I think, right? I mean, that was before the really big boon with, like, Double Fine Adventure.
Double Fine, yeah, right? Exactly.
That was before that, though, right? And you still got this off?
Yeah, I was a little skeptical as to whether or not I would make our goal for the project, but it went through with the support of fans and them just spreading the word, and it was kind of phenomenal just watching. It's just almost the same as, you know, the Reddit thing or any of the popularity that I've received right now. I was just totally blown out of the water by fans just being so supportive.
A lot of people are really curious how the back end works, but they're kind of intimidated because they don't want to like jump into it. And so I see a lot of people not taking that next step. Obviously, you who have succeeded would probably recommend it, but I guess do you think that that's a good tool for people to get projects out that they previously couldn't get?
Absolutely, and especially if you have a following on any of the social media websites, that following, and as I just spoke about before, is such a good way to get people to support your project, and being able to fall back on that fan base for their support is really helpful. But Kickstarter not only allows you to put out a cool idea for a project and say, hey, give me money. It's also a really good marketing tool because a lot of people frequent Kickstarter now, especially since Double Fine's Kickstarter. Right. And a lot of people are investing in these projects, and a lot of people get really excited about the rewards. That's a really big thing with backers, is you need to find some creative and really fun rewards to give them that also won't set you back too much in your goal. You have to be able to incorporate rewards into your funding goal for the project. The approval process is pretty straightforward. You just submit your idea to Kickstarter, and they take a look over it and give you their stamp of approval, and then you go ahead and start creating all of the reward tiers, which that part can be a little daunting.
No,
but,
yeah, I mean, I've seen people with like warehouses full of T-shirts now, like not realizing exactly how many such and such reward is. But
Right, and I think if you've done one Kickstarter, you'll definitely learn a lot more if you have, so that when you do another Kickstarter, like I might plan on doing.
I was just going to ask, is that where Johto's heading at this point? I mean,
maybe.
I mean, if you got successful before Double Fine, I can only imagine after, and all the publicity from the first and all that. I'd hope you go to. I just love Kickstarter because it also just gives fans a little opportunity to give something extra if they want to, for a little something extra back. After you got all the funding, you started working with YPAD Records. How did that experience go?
Really interesting experience. I don't want to say, like, I found them through Zelda Reorchestrated. I feel like I've been following in Zelda Reorchestrated's footsteps, and
it's
luckily,
not a bad plan for survival, I would say.
No, we're all good friends, but they've taken a lot of steps to ensure that their upcoming album Untitled Symphony is going to be a big hit, and naturally I've been trying to follow their model of success because there have never been any projects of our kind dedicated solely to one video game series. So
right. I mean, aside, like, I know that there is an orchestrated, like the Hyrule Symphony or whatever, way long ago, like 2001 or something. That was like an official Nintendo produced thing. But since then, you don't really see any fan
dedicated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so obviously, we're moving with our media today to like a line where remix culture is so prevalent, it's hard to tell what's copyright, what's not, what's okay. So
yeah, and I want to clear that up actually, because a lot of people have been asking me, isn't this illegal? Isn't Nintendo going to get on your ass about this?
Well, right. YPAD got you the rights, correct? Or they pay the dues? Or?
YPAD Records is a licensing group out of San Francisco, and they're basically a team of really geeky guys that I've come to love and adore. They are a subsidiary licensing group from a larger one, and they specialize in copyright clearance for video game music covers. And basically, they just go through their company and they'll get into direct contact with the game company or the original copyright holders of the game music, and will settle a royalty rate. And then you can upload your music to iTunes through their music manager, which then is basically, it's all on them, and they do all of the accounting. So they'll deduct whatever royalties you need to pay for your to the game company for selling, covers of their music, and then you get whatever's left over, which is a really good deal, in my opinion.
No, yeah, I mean, that sounds like an excellent system, especially for most people, obviously, like yourself. You guys are just musicians. You just want to make the music, and you don't want to go through all the legal knots and whatnot.
Right. Nobody wants to step on Nintendo's toes or the Pokemon company's toes. Yeah.
Or worse, no one wants to get stepped on by Nintendo. The other way around.
Precisely. And there are ways of working with it to make sure that your work is safe and sound, especially fan work. YPAD, I think, is making that much more accessible to video game musicians such as myself. And I think that if anybody out there wants to do video game music covers that are really high quality and on par with the stuff that, Zelda Reorchestrated and I do, or like they even licensed music for Lindsey Sterling, who did the Zelda medley on violin.
Yeah, I've seen that before.
Those people should definitely check out YPAD Records. All I really wanted to do in the beginning was I wanted to create a cinematic narrative of the storyline from Pokemon Red and Blue in music form, and it was just... Yeah, I wanted to be able to explore like the emotional depths of what it would actually feel like to be a Pokemon trainer in the Pokemon world. I imagine it's a little more terrifying than it seems in the games.
Oh, no, I think your music captures that a lot. There's a lot of really great moments, especially like going through like the Ghost Tower in Lavender Town. Those are excellent renditions.
That was my favorite track to write.
Those are really good. Now, yeah, I did like a whole. There's all kinds of silly like rumors and whatnot that are associated with Lavender Town. I don't know if you've heard them before.
Creepypasta.
Yeah, all the creepypasta. I did a video on that. People are like really into that, especially now that it's Halloween season. Obviously, it's all false, but just listening through, people have like this new stigma when it comes to that song. And so to hear a version that I can point to and say, oh no, you want to hear one that's actually creepy? Listen to that. And it's very like, you feel the morning and whatnot. That's great. And I also love the beginning of the one where you're battling your rival. You get that feeling like,
yes.
It's like, oh, what? There's still one more battle? Like just
exactly.
those moments. It's very cool. It's a retelling. Kind of like listening to the songs the way you might have heard them when you were a kid, not realizing that you didn't have greater musical tastes than chiptunes. So. It's
amazing how a child's imagination can flesh out, these bare bone like skeletons of music into something much more than that. And that was what I was definitely trying to capture in this album.
It really would be cool if they took the same step that you're taking. And
I agree completely. And in fact, I've come to think of my music in recent years as being a sort of fan activism movement to get Nintendo to just hurry up and orchestrate their own Pokemon soundtracks.
we want it all orchestrated. We don't want media anymore. So all this talk about Pokemon has one of my questions I realized I totally skipped over. Why Pokemon? With all the video games out in the world, what made you decide to go for those ones?
Well, Pokemon and I have a very long history, as you can probably imagine.
Anybody our age pretty much had to have grown up with it. You couldn't avoid it one way or another.
Exactly. Yeah, it blew up in the 90s, and I got wrapped up in the craze when the TV show came out. So that was my first experience with Pokemon, was watching the TV show, and I bought like the official Pokemon handbook and started collecting the cards. My family was too poor to afford to buy me a Game Boy though, so I never actually played any of the games until about 2001 when Gold and Silver, about the same time Gold and Silver came out. So my first game was actually Pokemon Crystal. So I had to go back and play Pokemon Yellow to sort of get the story. You can imagine my confusion when I went to Mount Silver and I encountered this silent trainer who sent out a Pikachu and Charizard, and I'm like, is this Ash? And then I got really upset at myself later. I was like, oh no, that's Red.
I feel like Pokemon, it had kind of this sort of stigma, like, oh, that's a kid's game. I mean, some people are still gonna think that, but I feel like we're living in kind of this era of nostalgia where it's no longer like socially unacceptable to play Pokemon for the most part. I feel like a lot more people are still involved, and they're still playing the new games because they remember the things that they loved in the old ones.
Yep, it's no longer a taboo to play Pokemon in college because, well, like
in college,
it was
especially
in, like, high school and middle school, it was weird, but
right now it's. I think there's a comic I read that's exactly.
Oh, is it zombie?
Yes,
something
Awkward Zombie.
Awkward Zombie. Yes, that is like my favorite comic, and it pretty much sums up how I feel about that situation.
There's another plug for you guys. Go read Awkward Zombie. She's got all kinds of really funny comics.
Yeah, and Rare Candy Treatment is also amazing.
So, Braxton, we've covered a lot. I just have one last question for you.
Yes.
And that is, what tips would you have to an aspiring musician who'd want to do something like you're doing now?
Like video game music covers?
Yeah, just anybody who wants to just take a music that they really appreciate and change it in some way to make it their own.
I think it definitely helps if you are an accomplished musician already and have, written music already. But if you are inspired by music that you hear and want to be able to create something like that, it's worth picking up, a music theory book to be able to analyze musical structures. And it's also worth investing money into like an instrument to be able to experiment and play around with. I mean, I had my keyboard, and that's where everything sort of that's where I picked up momentum, was just being able to play video game music. And yeah, once you've become successful enough at your craft, you can keep learning more and more. There are so many resources online about creating electronic music, or even orchestral samples, and using those, or other types of more acoustic stuff. And when it comes time for you to distribute and get those covers out there, you might want to look at resources like YPAD Records. They're always looking to sign talented artists who want to, bring their video game music to a broader audience.
All right. Well, thank you very much for talking with me. Obviously, congratulations on your new album. And for everybody listening, definitely check it out. Braxton, aka Skotein's Kanto Symphony album is available on iTunes and also straight from YPAD Records if you need that lossless quality or you hate iTunes for some reason. But either way, it's just $10, which is a bargain considering how much music and nostalgic value you'll get out of it. But thank you very much for talking with me, Skotein.
Yeah, thank you, Josh. This was a great opportunity. This was amazing.
Oh no, I'm glad. I could barely believe you even agreed to with all the press I thought for sure you were getting. So hopefully I can help you one way or another. Just get the word out and provide a nice story for people really interested in making this music. But,
yes, thank you.
Thanks. Have a nice day, and hopefully we'll see you sometime outside of school with Jodo.